If you're a Magikarp and you start off feeling like you're a piece of shit, it does not mean you will be a piece of shit for the rest of your life. If you know how to grow yourself, you can become a Gyarados, and that guy is powerful. Then you can become like a Mega Gyarados, and then you can shoot like Hyper Beam, and that's like. There's this concept from this anime called Hunter x Hunter that I really like, called Nen, and that's kind of like their anime magic system. There's a lot of how it's portrayed, I feel like, has a lot of relevance to real life in terms of our talents, our nature, and how to apply it, how to use it. So I kind of want to talk about that because I think it's really cool. And you know, this won't be just a weeby anime chat. I promise. It will. I will link it back to real life with this whole Nen thing, and it will be very cool, perhaps. So with Nen, there are 6 different categories. You have enhancers, emitters, transmuters, manipulators, conjurers, and specialists. And everyone has one of these Nen cores as their like default, right? So for example, if you are an enhancer, then you can use enhancement abilities to its 100%, you know, to as much as they can. And then whatever is on the side, you know, in this case it would be emitter and transmuter, you can use that to 80%. And then when it's further away, manipulation and conjuration, 60%. Then specialization, 40%. So essentially, the further you move away from your default core state, the weaker and less able you can use those abilities. So I feel like you might already know where I'm going with this. I feel like in real life, it's very similar, you know. We all have certain talents and strengths that comes very easily to us. And if that fits in with what society wants from you, or what your parents or whatever external circumstances that want from you, then that's really good. Then you don't really have much time adapting to kind of life, right? You just do your thing that you naturally would do, and everyone is just congratulating you for it, and it's a spiffing good time, right? But say society wants everyone to be enhancers, but you're actually a manipulator or a transmuter, or let's say a specialist, because that's on the, you know, other spectrum, right? Then you're gonna have a really hard time being an enhancer, because that's like you can only enhance, you know, to the 40%, as well as, you know, regular enhancers, which can do 100%. So if you go throughout your whole life trying to be an enhancer when you're really a specialist, then, well, it's just gonna be a struggle. You know, it'll be an uphill battle. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, then it will go through its entire life thinking it's stupid, right? Which is ridiculous because, well, fishes aren't designed to climb a tree, you know, and monkeys aren't designed to, let's say, dive into the ocean. My point is, you gotta figure out your nature, like what your Nen core is, or whatever your talents are. And, well, I think that's a lot easier said than done. Like, if anything, that's one of the most hardest things anyone can do, and if not one of the most important things. And it's a shame that school doesn't really do this. School kind of just like forces you into a certain type, let's say an enhancer, and then it's like, if you're not that type, then you have a really bad time in high school. It's like maybe all the jocks or whatever and the popular kids, they're enhancers, right? And they fit right in. The system works for them. But if you're some like nerdy or arty or geeky person that goes against the grain and you don't fit in, then, well, you'll feel like there's something wrong with you, and you'll hate life and society and people, etc., etc., and that's a shame. So how can we... Actually, before we go to how we can figure it out, can I just have a little rant about how I feel like schools, if anything, the main thing that they should focus on is, first and foremost, figure out what the student is naturally good at, you know, and what they like to do, you know, really like figure out the essence of that person. Instead of conforming them to a certain ideology, figure out their uniqueness and how to best expand it. It's like, you in school, it's like, let's say everyone comes into this earth and you have a body, and it's like you are human, and it's like you're driving this human body flesh through our society, but we don't really get like an instruction manual of how to life, right? So if anything, in school you need to figure out the manual for your car, for your vehicle, all right? how you're designed, because everyone's kind of designed and we kind of structure, we function differently. Not everyone is unique in their own way. So it's like you gotta try so ideally school should help you figure out as much as possible how to pilot your own ship. And then once you know how to pilot your ship or drive your car, whatever analogy you want to throw, then to know where to sail that ship, figure out how to use your ship and then figure out where to go with that ship, and it's like, I feel like as long as school can do that, then it's like when you start sailing, into the great depths of the seven seas, like you're fucking set, where you're going, what you're doing, and it's a good time, you're directed, you have purpose, you're not gonna get lost and, go into pits of despair and be depressed and, all the mental fatigue that we have in society as people that I see from not knowing where they're going and not knowing how to be themselves and how to use their facilities of themselves to their maximum potential. So that sucks how school does not do that. So then knowing this as a smart individual such as yourself, then you got to be like, well, if school is not going to do that for me, am I going to be a victim and be like, well, school sucks, fuck society, FTP, fuck this police and the system? No, don't be a victim, take responsibility. So what can you do? How can you figure yourself out? Well, the internet right now is really amazing, as I'm sure you know, as well as, insidious in its ways. But it's, let's just play to the amazingness of it. You can learn anything on the internet these days. And especially how to know yourself, like self-awareness comes from a lot of just knowledge. A lot of it you can just get from learning about stuff on the internet. So if anything, I feel like when a human being is birthed into this world, the first thing they need to be educated upon is not necessarily how to speak, like the basic stuff, but like self-awareness should take way more priority than like calculus. Like how many times have you used calculus or even algebra, outside of your life? Like very little, like extremely little. And it's very little bang for your buck. Where self-awareness could be the difference between like a sad, depressed, like man-child playing video games in their parents' basement versus that man-child becoming a millionaire, okay? Because they know what they're good at. They know their strengths. They know how to take responsibility for themselves. They have a pathway to develop themselves into, the highest class that they can be. Because everyone can adapt to a high class. No matter where you start, doesn't matter, it's like if you're a Magikarp and you start off feeling like you're a piece of shit, it does not mean you will be a piece of shit for the rest of your life. If you know how to grow yourself, you can become a Gyarados, and that guy is powerful. Then you can become like a Mega Gyarados, and then you can shoot like Hyper Beam, and that's like that's fucking powerful, man. That's really cool. But it's like if you never try and get yourself out of the Magikarp stage by not knowing how to use yourself, I suppose, then it's a shame, because everyone has potential to turn from a Magikarp to a Gyarados. Some people maybe they come into the world and they're like a Mewtwo. They're already OP, and it's like, good for you. You just do your thing. That's cool. But for everyone else, that maybe not a Mewtwo, it doesn't mean you can't become as great as a Mewtwo. You know what I mean? Everyone has a potential for greatness. You just gotta know how to pilot yourself into the greatness, and that's what school should really teach you. So. What are some ways you can actually do now on the internet to help figure out your navigation of your ship / your aircraft / your car / your... Well, I've been talking about this recently, and it's one thing that's really rocked my cock, and that's the whole cognitive functions, Carl Jung's analytical psychology, Myers-Briggs 16 personalities, depth psychology, whatever you want to call that shit. But it's essentially a personality system that really lets you figure your shit out, like especially the cognitive functions. And it feels like maybe I'll make once I know more about the cognitive functions, I'll make a video about this. But it's like, so as I said in the NEN types, there are 6 different NEN types, right? Well, for cognitive functions, there are 8 different cognitive functions, and I feel like you can actually view the cognitive functions as kind of like a NEN sort of system. where, for example, if one of your default cognitive functions is, let's say, introvert intuition, NI, which will make you an INFJ or INTJ, then you're really good at seeing the bigger picture. You're really good at absorbing information in, and then organizing that into sense and insights, and then kind of like improving system and seeing the bigger picture. That's what you're really good at. Whereas on the kind of the other side of that scale, where very detail orientated, using like spreadsheets, and because there are people that like there are people that like they really enjoy organizing things and making spreadsheets for everything, and you're like, you fucking nerd, just go with the flow, just live life. But like they're like, no, I want my spreadsheets, right? And it's like, power to you. And that's a very much like SI focused person. If your dominant function is SI, which is well, you figure it out if that's you. And that's a lot to do with attention to detail, like the everyday little things, the repetitive tasks that that they enjoy doing, those people with a SI function, and it's like, well, we need people to do that, because it's like, if you're NI and you don't like doing that, maybe you can see the bigger picture, you can give the bigger picture to the world, and then the SI people, they can do the nitty gritty things, the little attention to details. Or if you're like extroverted sensing as a default function, then you're very action orientated. You don't really think, you just kind of do everything on impulse. You don't have a long-term plan, right? You just do. And it's like, well, maybe you want to be in a career where that actually allows you to just do without really thinking too much ahead, So for example, I think, even being like a waiter or something, it's very much in the moment, and you're constantly just doing things, and you don't really have to like think beyond that shift, of what's to come. You just kind of do the thing as you go in. Whereas if you have an I function, it's like, well, they're really good at being actually like counselors and psychologists, because they can take in the information from someone else, kind of absorb it and then form insights and then shoot it back at them. All right. So it's like, sorry, this kind of turned into a whole Myers-Briggs spiel, but like, when you know what you're good at, then it's so much easier to direct yourself into a path that's just flowier for you. That's more fun. That's more aligned. There's less resistance. There's less pushing a boulder up a hill, and more just like galloping in the fields of Norway. So. And besides Myers-Briggs, cognitive functions, look, you can do astrology, you can do human design, you can do like Enneagrams, the DISC test. Like, there are so many things actually out there that you can just learn about yourself, like Harry Potter houses, like whatever floats your boat, And it's like, the more systems you learn, the more correlations you see between the different systems. Or maybe that's just me, but well, no, I think everyone will see the links, between, it's like certain personality types of the Myers-Briggs correspond to certain archetypes of the zodiac, of astrology, and so on. So and then certain, and then that corresponds to certain types of human design with different authorities and, gates and lines and stuff. And it's like, the more information you have from these like different self-awareness systems, the more of a complete picture you can build of yourself. And then the more of a complete picture you have about yourself, the better your life becomes. I've never been this clear with my life direction as I have this year. And I think there's a lot of factors, but I think self-awareness systems and learning more about yourself through them has been insanely helpful. And sure, I think, not everyone needs it, especially like SE orientated types, where they just do. They don't really need to think about, this and how to aim themselves. They just kind of go with the flow, and well, I suppose naturally it works out for them. But if you're not kind of like that type, and you do think a lot and you ponder about certain things, or maybe you feel a bit different to society, then I urge you to learn more about yourself and how to pilot your machine, because it's unique, and that's not bad. I mean, of course it's not bad. In fact, it could be extremely good. It could be better than good. But regardless, if we want to see the potential of you grow into this world and affect the world that ideally that you can, for the benefit of everyone, including yourself, then you gotta figure your shit out. Figure out your manual, your craft, and then start piloting your craft in the right direction and make a change. Or at the very least, pilot yourself in a way that makes you happy. At the very least, it's like, if it doesn't matter about you not changing the world. It's like, it's chill. You don't need to change the world, but at the very least, make yourself happy. You don't need to make the world happy. At least make yourself happy. And if you're not, or you feel like something is off, you're not in the right place, or you keep encountering the wrong people, and things are, there's a lot of resistance from the external world, then chances are there's something about yourself that you're not aware of, that you haven't fully developed, or you're not steering yourself in the right way, that perhaps you would like to learn about. Oh, and there's another point I wanted to make. So you know how in video games you have like different stats, like strength, dexterity, intelligence, etc., etc. Well, we have that in real life, and you can put it under cognitive functions. Like I feel like you could literally map it out. It's like if you if you could have a stats chart of someone, and instead of having strength and dexterity, which is not very useful, I suppose, in a modern day society, because we're not hunting and chasing boars and shit, right? It's more about the mind. It's more mental. So it's like you can map out how strong your NI is, how strong your SE is, how strong your TI is, etc., etc. And then it's like you have a stats graph of someone. And that's really interesting. And I feel like over time, the more you learn about this kind of stuff, the more you can actually map it out for yourself. So then you know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Maybe you want to go more into your strengths in terms of you steer in your life, and then maybe you need to patch up weaknesses in yourself that's going to prevent you from the full acceleration of your steering towards your direction. You know that whole analogy of the glacier, how the glacier is like a little bit at the top, and then it's like this massive subconscious, unconscious at the bottom. Well, that's you. That's everybody. And if you're only piloting that top part, then you're missing out a huge chunk of yourself. So I believe it may behoove you to find, well, most of yourself, and then bring that to your service. And that's kind of the whole integrating your shadows individuation process that Carl Jung talks about. Enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. And maybe it's not for everyone. I feel like I say this with every video, but well, if you're watching this, it could be for you.